So, hello, I'm Telma, and I'm happy to represent Aalto and Helsinki University here, especially the Semantic computing group SeCo, who has created BookSampo, and I'm here to share some insights about how linked data from libraries can actually be used in digital humanities research. So, first, I just want to briefly introduce BookSampo, which is part of the Sampo series developed by SeCo Group. The Sampo model had at its aim to also build a national ontology called Finonto and an infrastructure for Finnish cultural heritage that could be then accessed through a semantic portal. And it is totally open source, so this model framework can be used for other projects too. So BookSampo is, of course, based on semantic web and residing on a Sparkle endpoint, and then the data can be accessed either through the endpoint or through the interface. And the aim was also to unify many heterogeneous data silos of cultural heritage data. And BookSampo is one of several examples of samples having cultural data or data related to Finnish wars or biographies of Finnish celebrities. And the three main components are first of all the linked data creation and publishing the model, then creating an interface with multiple perspectives to explore the data, and including these kind of filtering cycles where the data can be faceted in many ways. And here you can see how BookSampo as a portal has grown from the introduction and publication of the portal in 2011. And this paper is from 2013 and then until this year. So there are over 200,000 literary works, such as novels and poem collections and plays and so on, and over 100 book cover pictures, for example, and 60,000 authors. So it is a very broad resource to actually say something about Finnish literature from the metadata side. And here's a small screenshot about how the interface at the moment looks like. The SeCo group is also in the process of creating and developing a new interface that is more flexible regarding this filtering and looking for different attributes of the works. But BookSampo started as a collaboration between Finnish public libraries and semantic web researchers in Finland in 2007 and was first published in 2011. The data originally came from Helsinki metropolitan area libraries and was converted to RDF and the semantic web. And now new books and new material gets automatically converted every night from BDJ Finland that also delivers all this metadata to the public libraries. And it mostly uses Kaunokki ontology, which is an ontology developed for fiction literature. And the web is still maintained by a team of librarians, which improves the quality of the metadata. So they can add information, especially for the older works where it is not automatically found. And practically it then contains all literature available for Finnish people in Finnish public libraries. And here is a visualization of the most important entities and attributes for my research. So every literary work is described at two levels: as an abstract work, where the thematic keywords and other things that do not change in the physical publication are connected, and then the physical publication where there is also the publication year and the page count and the publisher of the physical actual book. And then of course the novel or any other work is connected further to the author And there's also a lot of information about the authors, such as usually their gender and nationality, occupation, and so on. So when I was looking at these geographical biases and trends in Finnish literature, I mostly used these concrete place and setting annotations and the genre and theme keywords as strings of the novels. And then I also looked at the authors and their nationalities and gender and the original language of the works by publication year. So my research was inspired by the idea of distant reading introduced by Moretti. So to adopt a quantitative perspective to literature and capturing some larger patterns in the literary production over time. And literary geography at two levels in terms of author, nationalities, and languages. So in terms of these extra textual features, and then also within the text and the contents of the works in terms of the setting of the story. And my research question was how the geography of novels that have been published in Finnish has developed in the past 50 years. So before I go to my results, I just wanted to discuss some points that I encountered when I was doing the analysis and looking at the semantic web. So this is a screenshot from the new interface we're developing, and there are two. You can see these maps and all kinds of visualizations that you can filter. For example, here it is filtered by the genre of detective stories. And as you can see, there are most events in the Great Britain and Sweden and other Nordic countries, but not all the geographical annotations are hierarchically connected. So for example, Stockholm is not connected to the link to the country of Sweden, which makes it difficult to group these annotations together. Also, there was quite a lot of lack of coherence in terms of genres and themes that had over 600 URIs and over 400 URIs without a clear hierarchy between them. And one annotator that I interviewed said that he just annotates everything that helps in searching the works, which might not help then the research. It is very difficult to say anything about a specific genre if the annotation and the URIs depend on the annotator. And for example, if I try to group war literature, the theme Second World War is hierarchically linked to the broader category of wars and then to societal events. Then hostilities is linked to societal events and further to events. Whereas wartime is just linked to social periods of time, and the Cold War is linked to mutual action and action. And these broader categories, of course, contain a lot of other things than war, so they cannot be used as such. So a lot more than the user interface is still needed to actually conduct some critical research with the data. So my solution was then to use Jupyter notebooks with Sparkle wrapper and RDF lib libraries to access semantic web through the endpoint and retrieve the annotations that were relevant for my research. Then I pre-processed some irregularities and errors in the data. For example, for the authors, sometimes the nationality was marked as Scottish or English or Welsh and or Brits, and I decided to treat them all as Great Britain Brits citizens, since it was not consistent when it was marked at either level. Also in Finland, there were cases the authors were annotated as Ålandians, which is Åland is an island in Finland, and then there was an own category for Swedish-speaking Finns, and I just labeled all of them Finns. Also, some categories such as Sami people or Finnish Swedes, I decided to just leave there because Sami people in northern Finland and Sweden and Norway cannot be limited to one country. And Finnish Swedes, of course, then live in Sweden, so they also cross these country borders. And then after filtering through the relevant or wanted period of time, the dataset resulted in over 16,000 Finnish novels and 17,000 translated novels. And here, these graphs visualize the unbalanced representation of original languages and nationalities in translated novel literature. So I'm concentrating only on the genre of novels. So the violet, it's quite small, but I hope you can see that the violet here is English language. Then in blue shades, you have all the Nordic languages. In orange, you have the most popular European languages, and in gray, everything else. And as you can see, the gray part is very small, although it's containing most of the world's languages. And the same to the right is then divided by nationalities. And this part of English literature maps quite well to all the English-speaking countries' nationalities, to the US, UK, Canada, Ireland, and Australia. And here in blue, you can also see that the deep blue is actually Finland, since we have a Swedish-speaking minority, so a part of Finnish national literature also is part of translated literature due to this bilingual status. So here, what is maybe interesting to see is that the English, the proportion of English or Anglo-American literature is peaking at the 19th, and now towards the end of this investigated time period, it seems like literature is becoming a bit more diverse in terms of backgrounds. And it's especially due to the decrease in amount of American authors that are translated into Finnish. But then again, I use the author gender annotations from the web, and when this was connected, it revealed another bias that's connected to author gender. So on this upper row, you can see male authors, and then here you can see female authors and the original language of the works. And it shows that the linguistic diversity for males is more diverse than for female authors. If you don't take into account English and Swedish written literature, it is a very small proportion that come from other languages for women, whereas for men, it's almost a quarter. Still not that much, but it's still more. And the same bias applies for nationalities. Here the violet, US and UK still dominate for both genders, but still even a bit more for female authors. And also the proportion of Swedish language is much more prominent for female authors. Well, then to the other aspect, so geography in the novels written by Finnish authors. So these are works that are originally written in Finnish. And I was interested to see which countries attract the interest of authors here in Finland. Sadly, only about 1/3 of Europe publications were annotated for the geographical setting, so this is not representative of Finnish literature as a whole, but maybe can still tell about some trends of what Finns are interested in. So I half manually grouped the place names by country, all the cities or regions that did not have the hierarchy in the original data. I then used the geonames geonames database to map them further onto country level. And here you can see from the 19th until the end of the 2010s how the geographical settings have evolved. And almost every year after the main proportion of Finland, you have Russia as the second most popular country. And the relative proportion of Finland as a story setting is slightly decreasing, but still the most dominant. But it seems like there are coming more individual colors, so more individual countries mentioned in literature, showing that the interest of Finnish authors is actually directing abroad. Here you can see the same development on the map. In this graph, it's the 1990s. And in this one, it's the 2010s. And as you can see here, almost whole Africa is missing. There is very few mentions outside Europe. And here, especially Asia is getting more populated. Some countries also in Africa do have some mentions, but still the main focus is in the northern countries, Russia, and then all over Europe. Also, it seems like European countries are more balanced according to gender, or even attracting a bit more female authors' interest. The color shows the relative proportion of female and male authors writing about these places, whereas here in Africa, the mentions are mostly by male authors. So then, since Russia was the second most popular country, I was further interested about what authors actually write about when they write about Russia, and I used the theme annotations from the graph, and then I clustered them based on these keywords. And the two biggest clusters were related to war literature. So the fourth one was more biographical, having some very personal also accounts on history and historical war novels and memories. The second one was a bit different, maybe more societal. The third one is actually also related to war. It's about personal development and relationships, moving. There were a lot of people from the Russian border that had to flee to Finland during the wars. Then the fourth one was thrillers and crime fiction novels, and the last one was concerning women and historical romance. And here, if you look at the numbers divided by author gender, you can see that women and men have very different perspectives when they write about Russia, and that's why it's important to hear both. And on the map, it can be shown that actually almost all the Finnish mentions of Russia deal with Finland. They don't tell so much about Russia, but are very interested in Finnish national history. So to conclude, I hope I have shared some insights about how library linked data can actually be used in DH research. It is possible, but it requires a careful pre-processing and knowledge of the whole database and compromising on very detailed claims. And novels seem to be becoming more diverse, both in terms of authors and exegetical indices and within the textual settings. And then there might be some biases in the annotations. These geographical settings were not annotated everywhere, which also raises the question when the geographical setting is seen important, if it's related to some genres, and when it should be annotated, like how prominent should a geographical place be in a novel that it deserves an annotation, and how fine-grained these annotations should be. So this calls for future discussion and development between the annotators and librarians, and digital humanities scholars, as well as semantic web researchers. Here are my references, and then thank you, and please have any questions. I'm happy to answer.
Thank you very much, Telma, for this really interesting analysis, as a comment by Daniel said in the chat.
Yes, thank you.
I want to ask a question. At the beginning of your talk, you mentioned the problem that Stockholm may not be connected to Sweden in the data. And yes. I suppose this is very common problem, and a problem also for not only for your research, but also for the searching of the portal. Are there mechanisms planned or already in place to leverage this kind of problems?
Yes, we have discussed this a lot, and maybe the main problem right now is that the librarians who are maintaining this are using just also an interface to annotate them, and they annotate it. When they correct these annotations, they do it work by work, and that would of course be a lot of work if they would do that. So it should be done by the semantic web researchers to do a bulk update for the whole database. And since it also originally comes from heterogeneous sources and not the URIs are currently, they only use geonames. So now it's more unified and could be done through some automatic processing. But the historical annotations also have other URIs that are not so simple to correct. So this is a great point of discussion, and we hope to be able to solve it in the future.
Thank you very much. There's also another remark by Steve in the chat. I love the requires careful preprocessing and compromising on specific detailed claims. And I think this is a nice reminder of the limits and context of data, which we all deal with which we find from the bibliographic domain.
Yes, but on the other hand, I think that the good side of semantic web is that it is actually done by these librarians or other specialists in the field, compared to NLP methods of just automatically recognizing some entities or geographical names from the texts. So it is also very reliable when it's made by humans, but of course it's also then always an interpretation.